Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for starting a brand new week with us, as Maya Cowan is going to join us talking about UFOs and anthropology. She is brilliant, and why shouldn't she be? She's a BC girl. Yes, she is. She's homegrown right here near SOR headquarters, so we like her. We do, and she knows her UFO stuff as well. We are going to have a great time with her tonight, but the best part about tonight is we have each and every one of you right here for us as well, including Fast Hemi with the gold medal tonight, Eternity Eternal with the silver, Kitty Caddywhack with a bronze medal, and Race Fan placing fourth tonight. David Nornberg, Hippie Deidre, and Kitty Caddywhack, how are you? Robert Lamoth, Necessary Dialogue, and T-Bone, my man. Thank you for joining us as well. Scrolling on down, we have Attorney at Large, Michael Morris. Michael Morris will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Mel WD-40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show, because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You don't want any of that rigidness. The aliens don't like rigidness, so we're glad to have Mel lubing us up as we speak. Deborah Rooney, how are you tonight, my dear? Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, thanks for coming on in. Keith McCormick and Frankie B, good to see you both here as we continue on with our roll call. There's Flat 6. Mama Catherine, mwah, I love you, my dear. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I know you're going to enjoy tonight's show. I know you will, so I promise you on that. Let's scroll on down next, and who will we say hello to next? Well, let's just keep scrolling here because there's a big conversation. Bar Madison, how are you? Mr. Cowley, thanks for coming on in. Little Timmy James, we'll see you later. He's at home tonight. He's working on episode 4 of Something Strange in the Forest. Yes, he's having a great time with that. Number 2 in your program, starting on defense tonight from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. There he is, signing autographs after the show as well. Yep, he's going to sign autographs. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. Amanda, how are you tonight? Good to see you as we continue on with our roll call. Nina Williams and Ozzy, good to see you both here tonight. Delilah, welcome to SOR Chat. Digger Dog, good to see you. Walter Kochabinski, thanks for coming on in as we continue on with our roll call here. Sweet Donna C., thank you for joining us. Erica Stover, it's been a while. Glad to have you here. And who is next on our list? Scrolling on down. Jerence Carter. Yes, Jerence Carter has arrived. Alien Critter, good to see you. And who is next here? We scroll on down, and we keep scrolling. Road Flare, thank you for joining us. And Rock and Rory, good to see you. Damian Wyatt, thank you for joining us tonight. And who is next? Well, they're still coming in. Beelzebrad, has a devil put aside for me, for me, for me? Yeah, you know the song. I don't need to go any further than that. All right, let's get the radio side going here. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and we are going to delve into the scientific aspect of UFOs, anthropology, UAP, aliens, NHI. Scientist Maya Cowan is here to discuss it all with us. We are going to have a wonderful, wonderful show with her tonight. Kathy Evans, how are you as we continue on with our YouTube roll call, which is what we do before we warm up for tonight's show? Coming up in about 40 seconds, and I'm pumped up about this one. I think you should too. Hey, I want to remind everybody that the Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis as well. You can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Why? We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So make sure you check it on out. You grab our gear and you wear it proudly, just like T-Bone does. Vanessa, how are you tonight? Good to see you tonight. And what else can I tell you? Oh, yeah. We got a great week coming up. It starts here in just a few seconds' time. Hi, Eversore. And throw those horns up, everybody. Let's rock.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Shush. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears towards the little cabin in the woods, where together, my friends, we own the night. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read the Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We have an amazing show of science and UFOs tonight. Scientist Maya Cowan is going to join us to talk about all things UFO, UAP, anthropology in between. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Probably one you're going to want to download in your podcast selection as well. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller will be here with another spooky story. We're going to follow that up with Little Timmy James and the UFO Report. We might even give you an update on Flight 21 as well. It'll be a lot of fun. I know you're going to enjoy it. Yes, you will. Maya Cowan is an anthropologist currently completing her PhD dissertation on the current era of UAP science at Binghamton University. She is a member of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies and the Society for UAP Studies Citizen Science Working Group. She also works for investigate the unknown, Project Nanu, on the data science team. In her spare time, when she's not playing around with UFOs, she and her dog Cherry are running, roller skating, and playing music. Maya will be teaching a course for the Society of UAP Studies coming up. Again, she did it in 2024, called Anthropology and UAP Questions of Humanity, Culture, and the Unknown. She is a brilliant one. She is going to school me tonight because that's usually what these science people do. So let's bring her on. Maya Cowan, it's so great to have you back on Spaced Out Radio, my good friend. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. And, we had you on the show about a year and a half ago, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
And I'll tell you, the UFO world has changed so much about that since then. And we're going to get into that pretty heavily here. But for our audience who may not be familiar with you, how does one go to school looking for anthropology and end up in aliens? and UFOs?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you get lucky like me, and you have an advisor who kind of just lets you do whatever you want. So that's how I ended up doing it. I mean, I do know other people who have sort of specifically gone looking for supervisors who will let them do a project about UAP. And certainly there's a lot of professors through Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies or Society for UAP Studies who research this kind of thing, who I imagine would be willing to take on grad students kind of doing, especially the religious studies aspect of things. I will say, a quick correction, I'm not teaching the course for Society of UAP Studies anytime soon, as far as I know, but I am teaching that same course for Binghamton University right now. So I have currently 11 students in my class who, I guess, ended up going to school for anthropology and studying UFOs, but this time I get to teach them.
That is so cool. How did you get started on teaching about UFOs, and how do you teach it?
Well, I first taught this course for Society for UAP Studies last year, and so it was sort of specifically looking at the anthropology of the subject from a really broad range of topics. So we looked at, for example, Indigenous studies perspectives on the UAP topic. We looked at religious studies perspectives on the UAP topic. We talked about how anthropologists engage with their subjects and the sort of ethical implications with that, with especially UAP experiencers. And then we looked at what I'm sort of looking at, which is sort of the cultural aspects of the science of UAP studies and how that intersects with more of I guess the quote unquote nuts and bolts side interacts more with the quote unquote experiential side of things. So that's kind of what I'm teaching about right now. And my students, I didn't have assignments for my students in Society for UAP Studies, but my students right now are doing assignments that are kind of reading some of the more academic literature and then some of the more case studies and sort of creating these reflective assignments about that. And then I'm also having them do kind of like case studies of looking at different sort of quote unquote unexplained phenomena from around the world and in different cultures, and writing about the sort of cultural perspectives on those things and the ways that having a certain phenomenon within a certain culture influences perhaps the way that people think in general, but also how they think about what is explained and what's unexplained.
How
Because
does it go
obviously
over?
we have kind of a sort of an idea of what's unexplained within the sort of typical North American framework, but that's not necessarily the case for cultures all around the world.
How does it go over with the students who have that unique curiosity, saying to you, are we really alone? Are these things really real? Or am I just, taking this for the sake of taking this course?
I don't think I have any students who are taking it just for the sake of taking it. And maybe that's not surprising because I feel like those students kind of filter themselves out. But I do have a couple of students who have said that they are experiencers or they have family members who are experiencers. So they've been taking it specifically to kind of better understand what they've experienced. I even had a student, before we even talked about the term ontological shock, I just introduced the concept of ontology to them. And my student said that she had a quote unquote ontological interruption through her experience. So she kind of came to that on her own terms, which I thought was great.
Wow. I mean, I think it's great that you're moving that far ahead with everything, and the fact that you get to meet these students who are, potentially having experiences and are looking at it from a scientific perspective of what's going on. I mean, that is enlightening towards the future of this subject.
I like to hope so. I'm pretty lucky that my university, at least my department within my university, allows graduate students who don't necessarily have a PhD yet, but just have whatever, but who have a master's degree are allowed to propose their own courses about their own research. And as long as it gets enrolled, we're kind of just allowed to teach it. So of course I proposed this course and luckily it went ahead and we have a good class going.
What is the reaction from your professors and those above you as you go through your dissertation when you told them that you wanted to actually do a dissertation on UAP UFOs, NHI, and the subject alike?
My supervisor was initially a little bit skeptical, but he recognized that he thought it would be, at the very least, an interesting and good topic for me to study. So he basically told me, yeah, just, go ahead and do that, I guess, and we'll see how it works out. One of my committee members is a little bit indifferent. One of my committee members, who he studies more of like a religious sort of anthropology to begin with, but he was really excited about it. He thought that was a great idea. And then I have a fourth committee member who's actually a biological anthropologist. So I'm not a hard scientist, but he is a hard scientist. He's a geneticist. And so it's been really invaluable to have him on my committee because he's able to provide that sort of scientific context for things. And I'm able to talk through a lot of that stuff with him. And he joined my committee specifically because he's really interested in this topic. So that was really great.
Do you see from the scientific community this subject starting to open up quite a bit? I mean, there's still a lot of black and white type of scientists out there. They don't want to explore the gray matter that is UFOs, UAP, and yet here we are. You're indoctrinating this into Binghamton University, and people are accepting of what you're wanting to do and the challenge that you face with it.
Yeah, I think that's a complicated question because it definitely varies a lot by scientific discipline. And I think certainly more and more scientists, at least from the conversations that I'm having, but I will temper that. The conversations that I'm having are mostly with scientists who already are interested in this topic, if not publicly, then at least sort of behind the scenes, working with people who are publicly out there about their interest in UAP or about unexplained phenomena in general, or who've had experiences themselves. And so I think it's complicated because more and more of those people are coming out about their interest and their experiences. I'm not sure that necessarily means that more and more scientists are becoming interested in it necessarily, but certainly a lot more are feeling more comfortable enough to come out with it. That being said, there still is certainly a lot of stigma, and I'm not sure that it's opened up necessarily enough within the hard sciences in order to make it necessarily acceptable. Like there's still a lot of stigma. Graduate students can't necessarily go to school for physics to study. Well, they can't really go to school for physics to study UAP. And part of that is not necessarily that there aren't professors out there who would be willing to supervise a project like that, but because the general academic infrastructure is still a little bit hot. Well, not even a little bit, but is still quite hostile to that. So that's what I'm hearing from a lot of physicists, for example. But there actually was an academic study conducted, I think, about a year ago, certainly within the last year, maybe year and a half. It was by, the authors were Yingling and Yingling, and they basically surveyed faculty members from different departments across different universities about their attitudes towards UAP, and not just like, do they believe in UAP, but I think that was one of the questions, but do they believe in the merits of studying UAP? Do they believe that UAP studies should be funded? That sort of thing. And they found major differences between the different departments. So, for example, people in the arts and humanities, faculty members were a lot more likely to say, yes, we believe that this is an area worth studying. And basically into the harder sciences that you go, like the physics and mathematics, were much more likely to say, no way, we don't think that this is a topic worth studying. So it does seem to be shifting somewhat, but there's still, unfortunately, a lot of hostility within academia.
I mean, literally, we're sitting on a brand new frontier here,
Absolutely.
Is what it is. And is it still the old stigma in the scientific area? And I don't want to put you on the spot, and if this is an uncomfortable question, just tell me to beat it. But is there still the old stigma out there from the scientific community that there is nothing out there, we haven't found anything, and, it's swamp gas, it's balloons, it's satellites, why are we wasting our time doing this when we could be a little bit more proactive with our funding, proactive with our research, because from what I've seen, research needs money. And this is still a very off-color topic to research, whether it's grants or government spending or whatever it may be. I mean, what is the overall aspect you think with I'll take the heat. I'll call them the dinosaurs of science.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I think that is still the majority opinion within sciences, is that it's not necessarily worth funding, especially when funding is so scarce, and especially today with all of the cuts that have happened in the U.S. with academic funding. And certainly that is the biggest challenge. I hear over and over and over again from scientists that the challenge, stigma is certainly a giant challenge, but a lot of stigma could be overcome with adequate funding. I mean, that's always been the case. Universities will pretty much let you, there's a common wisdom in Canada that if you haven't necessarily been accepted into a PhD program, but you're able to secure a doctoral grant from the Canadian government, so like SSHRC or Social Sciences, National Humanities Research of Canada, National Sciences and Energy Research, Engineering Research Council of Canada, or the health one, whatever that's called, Canadian Institute of Health Research, I think. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've had to know those. But if you're able to secure that funding for your doctoral program, you can pretty much write your own ticket to getting into a PhD program, because you've already funded yourself and proven yourself fundable. I will say, as a side note, I had, it's run out now, Social Sciences and Humanities grant from the Government of Canada for my doctoral research, which was not to study UAP, but they do not check up on what you're using it for. So thank you. The Canadian government technically has funded for me to go to a lot of UAP science conferences.
I love it. We need it up here. We totally,
Definitely.
To me, that's good taxpayer dollars at work. I don't mind paying my taxes on that. I don't.
Glad to hear it.
Congratulations for spending my tax money in a great place.
Thank you.
Maya Cowan is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're talking about the scientific community of UFO/UAP studies. There has been so much going on, and whether it's acrimony or whether it's ego, whether it's media within this subject over the last year, especially since the last hearings. Just your thoughts on where this topic is headed, because I think many of us on the outside looking in who may not understand the entire scientific aspect of this, we're at a little bit of a loss for words of what direction we're actually going in here.
Yeah, personally, I think that the UAP studies community in general, and I'll include the scientific aspects of that community as well as the more philosophical or humanities or religious studies or social sciences aspects of that community, the broad tent of UAP studies in general as this sort of interdisciplinary effort, I think is kind of, I'll be honest, I do see it as kind of in still a little bit of a growth phase as far as figuring out what those next directions are supposed to be. But the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, for example, has a number of projects that are ongoing, and I think that they're going in some interesting directions, like their USO unidentified submerged objects, I guess, project is looking at some really interesting areas about how we can look at ways to really look underwater as far as that goes. So that's been an area that's been relatively unexplored so far. It makes sense. It's really difficult, but there are people looking at that, not just that specific working group, but it seems like there's been a lot more interest in that, for example. I'm still following projects that are looking at how to basically use observatories and like multi-sensor suites to observe UAP. So that's one sort of specific area that I'm a little bit more versed in. But there's definitely also, well, okay, one of the major challenges has always been with data and databases, right? And how do we make sure that not just that we're producing new data, but how do we go back and look at all of this data that we have, going back to like really the 1940s about all of these case reports. And there really are these vast databases, but the problem is that they're so dispersed. You know, they're in archives all over in different places. You know, there's the National UFO Record Society, and then you have like all of Stanton Friedman's archives, which are literally in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and anybody could go look at them, but they'd have to go to the archives in Fredericton, New Brunswick, the provincial archives. So it's difficult, and there seems to be a lot of projects that are popping up about how do we use that data? How do we determine what is quote unquote good data and what is quote unquote bad data, and how do we sort that data and how do we categorize it? How do we synthesize it? How do we bring those things together? And it's a major challenge, especially in this topic, because there's so many groups, as we all know, more and more of them popping up all the time. And a lot of them want to generate their own data, but a lot of them have already been out there generating their own data. And so how do we amalgamate all of that has been a really big challenge that I think a lot more people are starting to look at.
Coming from an experiential standpoint, I'm one of the rare breeds where I'm an experiencer and I'm a journalist at the same time, which means that out of both, I'm a little bit of a weirdo because just the way I am, I want to talk about this each and every night. How do we blend the scientific community with the experiential community? Because there seems to be a very big divide between those two groups, and one doesn't really want the other being around. I've had scientists tell me on this show that they need the experiencers to get the hell out of the way, quote unquote, because they need to allow the scientists to do the real work rather than playing in the woo.
Yeah, so that is difficult. It's a difficult question. I do have, I think, an answer for you on some level. I'm not sure it'll be completely satisfying because I know that it hasn't satisfied a lot of people in the past, but it's become a big part of my dissertation, which is that certainly they need to be working together. I think that's not even a question. And I think that there are some humanities and philosophy sort of projects that are trying to look at the science side of things, but it doesn't often go both ways, or it isn't often seen as going both ways. However, I think it does. And I think one of the things that is often overlooked among even scientists themselves, but when I talk to them about it, they all agree with me. I've never had a scientist say, no, that's not true, is that really all of the scientific projects rely on experiencers extremely heavily. Like no matter what project you're talking about or what scientific, aspect of the phenomenon you're looking at or what scientific perspective you're taking, it's all reliant on the experiencers. Like just to use the databases as one example, except for it's not just the database projects, obviously, it's also the observatory projects. They all rely on people's case reports. And just to use the data sort of processing side of things for one example extremely quickly is that is literally what the data is that they're looking at, is people's experiences. We would not have these databases if people weren't phoning in their experiences and taking note of things and taking note of the phenomenology that they are experiencing. What is it that they're seeing, smelling, hearing, feeling? All of it is so important. And, taking photographs, taking videos that can be analyzed, all of that sort of stuff is what goes into these databases. And so
let's hold that thought, because I want to continue this conversation when we get back from the break. Scientist Maya Cowan is here. UFOs, the experiencer versus science. Why is it important for the two sides to come together? We're We're going to come up with that answer next on Spaced Out Radio. All right. Maya, before we go any further, I do have to sing happy birthday to Area 54 here. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Area 54. Happy birthday to you. There you go, buddy. Happy birthday, bud. Yes, you could go get your Diet Pepsi. We got about 4.5 minutes. I'll take you out. There you go. There you go. Jeff Steve Garvey is here. He'll hit a home run for you. Who else has joined us here? Susan, hiding under the alias of Morris Van Buskirk. I had some great news today. By the way, Area 54, just so you know, Area 12 in my household had a birthday today as well. Area 12. My boy is Area 12. It's his birthday today. And I got some great news today from my daughter, where last night at a concert, her boyfriend proposed to her. She went in with a boyfriend and came out with a fiance. So I am pretty happy today because I absolutely love this young man and the way he treats my daughter. And so I am just pumped right up. I got the phone call today from her. She wouldn't even allow me to talk to me on the phone. It had to be by video so she could show me her gorgeous engagement ring. And me being the absolute wimp that I am to my children, I immediately started to cry because I'm just so proud of them, of all my kids. And I'm just so happy. It's been a really good day today. Really good day. Yes, June 23rd, Area 12 and Area 54. Dookie Pickles over on X, thank you, buddy. Mark Sanchez, how are you doing, buddy? And how is your collection of Hawaiian shirts? Give me an update on your health, bud. I'm curious to see how you're doing. And let's see, who else do we have here? Oh, Wes, thank you very much. Thank you, bud. I appreciate that. You didn't have to do that. If we do another fan party next year in Vegas, West, you got to come on out. You got to come hang with us. I know it's difficult because I know what you do behind the scenes, but if you can, that would be wonderful. James, Friday the 13th, how you doing? Good to see you. Thank you, Mama Catherine. Why do we cry as we approach middle age? Because seeing our kids happy is one of the most wonderful experiences in the world. That's the way I look at it. Yeah. Beautiful, Mark. That makes me happy to read that. Let's bring Maya back in. Maya, our prior conversation that we had prior to the show starting where I texted someone, they have responded. I've sent them your phone number. They're going to look into you.
Thanks.
No problem. I told them, I said, yeah, she's great except for the fact that she's got 6 toes each on each foot. So I said,
thanks for telling everyone my secret.
Maybe she got aliens. I said, I don't know. No, I didn't say that at all. I didn't say that. I'm just teasing. But
I figured.
hey, if something works out, great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We got about 30 seconds here. If I know this person the way I think I do, I think he will call. Just to chat. Pick your brain.
I'm hopefully looking forward to it.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you know who you are, hey, bud, how are you? Come up to Flight 21. Thank you to T-Bone and Area 54 ×2 for the super chats. Here we go, everybody. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Science versus the experience. Can the two come together to move ufology forward? We're going to find out. Maya Cowan is our guest tonight. We'll bring her in momentarily. But first, we want to remind everybody that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here's Maya Cowan hanging on out from Binghamton University, where she actually teaches a course on ufology, which I think is great. And right before the break, Maya, we were breaking down the vast difference between the scientific community and the experiencer, and I'd love to continue that conversation because it is very much a passion of mine. You know, I've talked to a lot of experiencers over the years, and, you know, they just want to know why them. They don't care about the technology. They don't care about the anti-gravitics. They don't care about the G-forces or whether or not the government is hiding things. They just want to know about why them. And it is probably the most impossible question to even get an answer to. And yet the scientific community, as Gary Nolan from Stanford University has said before, we wouldn't have any leads on this subject if it wasn't for the experiencers being brave enough to come forward. Yet there is this great divide in between the two, the nuts and bolts community and the experiential community. Yet, do you ever see that bridge being able to join together positively?
Yeah, I do think that it's absolutely possible. And, well, just as an example, so when I look at scientists who are using multi-sensor suites and observatories of different kinds in order to kind of try to characterize, like, how could we possibly study this scientifically? I think, well, first of all, I think there maybe needs to be more of an explicit acknowledgement that the reason that they even know what sensors or what observatory instruments that they need to put out there is because of people's experiencer reports and because of the specific phenomenology and the diversity of phenomenologies that have been reported in these instances. So, for example, if you're looking at sound, when the Galileo Project published their paper about their acoustic instrumentation, they justified specifically how far into the infrasonic and ultrasonic ranges they were looking for things by talking about experiencer reports and saying, for example, like, oh, people report, you know, often animals behaving strangely around these experiencers, which could suggest that, you know, there's things that are going on that are not, you know, I was going to say visible to the naked ear, but that's not a thing, you know, that humans can't hear. And, you know, other things like that of that nature. And so they're looking for very specific things. And the reason that they explicitly say that they're doing that is because of those experiences that people have. But I do think that there needs to be more of a direct involvement. The way that scientists, I think, often would say that this is difficult is because it's it's really easy to get clues, as Gary Nolan said, about where to look and what to look for through experiencer reports, but it's much more difficult to work within the actual scientific method and kind of do more with that. I am aware of a couple projects that are basically trying to use more like bio data, for example, about how to, and I'm so sorry, I wish I could remember the name of the specific project I'm thinking of, but I could look them up. But they're looking for funding for a way to essentially create suites of like biosensors, like heart rate monitors and EKG sort of equipment, so that they can hook up people during experiences and see if there's anything that directly correlates there. And so I think that's one interesting way that, you know, there's a potential for that collaboration. But I think even just having the kinds of conversations across like experiencers versus like nuts and bolts scientists is productive and helpful. And it's helpful for the other, for one hand to know what the other is doing, so to speak. Like that's always a good thing. And I hope to see more and more of that. Although it's also, I think, worth noting that a lot of scientists who study the UAP phenomenon are experiencers themselves. They just maybe aren't so open about it.
Yeah, it is a tough place to try and put everything together, because I mean you want to try and, you know, use this on a human aspect, but science is about finding out like the human feelings of it. I'm sorry, I'm not wording it very well. You know, science doesn't care about the human feeling of it, and they can't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that isn't, I don't say that as an insult to the scientific community, but they need to be able, it's like you can't care about a person if you're trying to fix their heart. You know, it's not that they have a broken heart. You have to, you know, maybe they've had a heart attack or angiograms or whatever it may be. You have to be stone cold in regards to the work that you need to complete to fix that heart. And the scientific community much works that way as well, where they are stone cold in their feelings about it, because the human emotions have to be away from what the data and the consensus says. You know, and I guess where I'm going with that is I understand the coldness of it all, but I think part of the issue that we have is people want to be included. People
Absolutely.
want to have their feelings going. So if people want to have those feelings, are there scientists out there who are doing work with experiential people to try and figure out how it's happening, why it's happening, so on and so forth?
Yeah, there definitely are. And I know at least of like some more hard scientists who certainly are open to and have had a lot of conversations with experiencers. Although I will say that I mean, I totally agree with you. And that is the key limitation of science, is that they are not equipped to deal with human experience and human emotion and human ontology. Science itself is a very specific ontological framework. It really is just one way of laying out, like, okay, this is how the world works. You know, we have these specific mechanics, we have these specific physics, this specific biological framework, and we have to work within that in data. And it is very cold. And I think that is the best argument for why this should be an interdisciplinary and not just a multidisciplinary, because right now UAP studies is very multidisciplinary, right? So to make my point about the difference between those two things, UAP studies is currently very multidisciplinary. There are people from all across the academic spectrum, from people who are like in the fine arts department or the humanities department to people who are in the physics and maths departments and the engineering faculty. All of those people are involved, but they're not necessarily collaborating and working together on the same projects. So a lot of times at, say, for example, I'm not calling them out per se in this, because I do think that there's some interdisciplinary work going on with them as far as I know. But for example, the Soul Foundation conference might have humanities talks and physics talks, but they're not necessarily talking about any projects that really combine these things. And I think that it would be really interesting to see a future for UAP studies where we are seeing more projects come out that really involve all of these aspects, right? Because I think you can still have the observatories and the sort of bioinformatics side of the scientific equation and still involve experiencers as people, but you maybe need like a psychologist to be involved for that, or a sociologist or an anthropologist or somebody in the humanities or people in the arts or people who are in the mental health field especially. And so that's the challenge, is I think that all of those things can and should be working together, but it's quite challenging with just the way that academia is structured, in my opinion, because if you look at the history of academia, like all of these disciplines emerging as their own things, they've just become more and more and more insular from each other, right? Like in the very beginning of academia, it was a lot more generalized as far as, you know, you could have people like Isaac Newton who are discovering gravity and then also totally just working on alchemy. And that's actually his main project. And so it used to be a lot more generalized, but over time, academia has become a lot more siloed from each other and a lot more methodologically insular, if that makes sense. So even between anthropology and sociology, which are basically the same things, if we're being honest, basically the same, but they actually are so different that I have trouble sometimes even like talking to somebody in sociology, because we have completely different methodologies and completely different theoretical frameworks and histories of our discipline that we learn. And so it can be difficult to talk across those methodologies and really come up with a truly interdisciplinary project that, you know, like just gathers all of this expertise together and comes up with something totally new. And I think that really sucks. But it's also a challenge that can't be, or that should be. It's not a challenge that can't be overcome. It's a challenge that can and should be overcome. And I think that it's a challenge for academia in general. And certainly UAP can't be the only issue, or I say UAP, but you know, the phenomenon in general, you know, it's true of ghosts and cryptids and all of these things, that we would be better off for finding a way to get past these sort of petty academic differences.
The stereotypes are what I think keeps the two sides divided on that. But I mean, there are more and more people. Like I look at Dr. Michael Masters from Montana Tech. I mean, he is very much involved, much like you are, in the anthropology side of everything, where he believes that, you know, in looking forward, these what we call aliens or NHI, whatever you want to call them, they might actually be the future us.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many plausibilities of, are they time travelers? Are they jumping dimensions? Are they from outer space? Are they from inner Earth? I mean, this is something that I find absolutely fascinating, you know, that most people don't take the deep dive on when it comes to where are we coming from and where are we going. I mean, when you look at Dr. Michael Masters saying these could be time travelers coming through, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's just as plausible as any other theory. You know, I don't have any, I don't claim to have any specific insight as to what the true theory is, but I do think it's worth considering all of those things. And I will stick up for the hard scientists in that I think that that's ultimately what most of those people are interested in doing, is really like they're using the tools that they have at their disposal because they're so specialized in order to kind of look forward to, like, if we are able to figure out our little piece of the puzzle, then maybe we can help in some way in, you know, figuring out the broader picture. Like if I can prove that this is time travel, or I can prove that this phenomenon is separate from this phenomenon, or these two phenomena are related, for example, then I think that's where they ultimately see the value of their work. A lot of times, maybe not all the time, but a lot of times.
What is your theory of non-human intelligence?
It's bad, but I don't know that I really have a comprehensive theory. I think that it certainly seems true. It seems obvious the more and more you look into it, actually, that a lot of, if not all, of the sort of non-human intelligence phenomena are related in some way. You know, people may have experiences that are of non-human intelligent beings or presences, but sometimes those experiences dovetail with like very nuts and bolts sort of technological experiences. Sometimes people only see something that seems incredibly nuts and bolts and it doesn't have anything to do with it. And sometimes people have experiences that are totally non-human intelligence that don't have anything to do with the nuts and bolts. But I think that there's enough intersection that they seem to be related, and it's worth plumbing what that relationship is. And it's also plumbing what the relationship is between like non-human intelligence and the phenomena of ghosts, for example, or cryptids, or really just about anything that can't be explained. Fairies, demons, angels, all of it.
Just a lot. I guess the beautiful part about it is it allows your mind to just wander, and because it's endless possibility and plausibility.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's just it. It's. I don't think I have a unified theory because I think I've just thought about too many different kinds of theories. And
what is your favorite what if? True? I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite what if?
Ooh, I would say my favorite what if is if they are us from the future, probably. Or my two favorite what ifs are us from the future and extraterrestrials. Just because I think extraterrestrials would implicate some broader questions that kind of go beyond us as just earthly beings.
I do have to ask, in regards to this, have you ever been an experiencer?
Yeah, actually, yeah. The first experience that I ever had was when I was about 9 years old and my little brother was 7, and we lived in a town in Saskatchewan with about 300 people. So we were walking from really one end of town to the other, but it wasn't that far. It was probably like a couple 100 meters or something, but it was my friend's house, and we were walking back home to our house, and we saw something in the sky. And it's been so long that I can't. People always like ask me to go into greater detail, and I'm like, I don't remember any greater details. But it seemed to be like a large, low-hanging, like silver, like metallic gray orb that seemed to just be floating in the sky up ahead. And we kind of looked at it and we saw it and we got scared and we ran home. And that was it. But it was enough to, I think I had enough sort of context for like that would be a UFO that I didn't even really think of what else it could be. Like that was just, it was true to me at the time that was a UFO. And I mean, it very well could have been a lost weather balloon or a spy balloon or any number of things. It's been so long that it's impossible to investigate it any further, but it definitely was a UFO to us at the time.
That is awesome. That is completely awesome. I mean, the fact that it is ingrained and kind of driven you to be who you are today and what you're studying now. Did you think as a little girl going through that experience that this is where you would be almost 2 decades later, trying to figure out the whole UFO timeline?
I did not think that, but my grandfather was always really interested in UFOs and aliens, and I think he actually really, like, he might say aliens, but I know that he really believed in the future human hypothesis because I remember him telling me about it when I was pretty young. Like maybe 11 or 12 or something like that. And so that was kind of what it always resonated for me as, which is probably why it comes to mind as like one of my favorite what ifs. but he had a different take on it though than Michael Masters, perhaps. Although I'll admit I haven't read all of his books, so I don't know exactly every single detail. But his theory of it was that they were us, but they had gone to another planet and evolved so far that they couldn't really remember how to be human, and so that they had like time traveled back to us to try to like remember about human emotion, and that's why so many experiences have a lot to do with human emotion. So that was what I remember my grandfather telling me. But yeah, it was never something that was like outside of my ontological framework as a kid. I definitely, you know, it was around. I remember watching documentaries about it. I remember my grandpa taking us on like a CE5 when he lived in Arizona, and like shining laser beams into the sky to try to attract UFOs and stuff. So it was, it's in a way I feel like I'm kind of just like carrying on the family business.
I love it. I love it. We got 3.5 minutes to go before we have to go to break. At the top of the hour, Maya Cowan is our guest tonight, the science behind UFOs. Where do you see the history of this? What's the history aspect of this to you? Do you look back and look, say, at a lot of the clues the Mayans and the Egyptians left in their hieroglyphics where, we see helicopters or we see what looks to be astronauts or alien-type grays? Do you look back in that and say, man, I think we've been contacted for thousands of years?
So we'll probably have to get further into this after the break because I kind of have mixed thoughts about it, if I'm being honest. So the first thought is, when it comes to art, absolutely. I think that there is a lot of, and I'm not like an art historian by any means, and I'm not an archaeologist, so it's really not my ultimate forte. But I do think that there is a lot of extremely interesting artistic motifs that seem to basically repeat themselves throughout human history that are possibly suggestive of something very similar that, is repeating itself enough that it gets put down in art in very similar forms. And I think that that's true of like religious motifs as well. For example, there's a lot of religious motifs, or even if you look at fairy tales, for example, like I remember, again, not my field, but I remember reading something about how if you look at the stories of like the Grimm's brothers fairy tales, some of these can be traced back for thousands and thousands of years in different iterations. Like people have been telling the same stories for generations. So I think that and generations being an understatement, for millennia. So it makes sense that, people would be having the same experiences throughout time for all millennia as well. When it comes to the architecture stuff, I'm much more skeptical that has anything to do with non-human intelligence, if I'm being honest.
So you don't think aliens built the pyramids?
I do not. I do not. I just think that there's too many explanations that have been floated by engineers who know much better than I do what they're talking about as far as what would have been capable by humans at the time. And unfortunately, I think they were built by people.
If aliens have been coming here for millennia, and this will be a warm-up for next hour, do you think that they have left some sort of mark that maybe we haven't picked up on in the way humanity has grown, learned to explore, technologically speaking?
I mean, it's certainly possible, but I will say, if anything, I think it's more likely to be something more internal, something more spiritual or religious or artistic than it is necessarily like architectural skill or engineering practices.
That's awesome. I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. as we got about 15 seconds before. I am so enthralled with this conversation that we're having because we are going to get into great depth on, can humans really accept the fact that maybe we are not alone in the universe? Scientist Maya Cowan is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. She's absolutely brilliant when it comes to the UFO/UAP topic. She's an anthropologist. We'll learn more when we return.
This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
All right, we are clear. I'm going to go take a quick break here for about a couple minutes, and I'll be right back. I'm just going to put you in the green room, okay?
Okay.
Be right back, everybody. How awesome is Maya tonight? She's fantastic. Let her know she's watching. All right, we are back, and we'll bring Maya back in here in a minute. Anybody else jump in here that I didn't see? I think I've got everybody tonight. Yeah, we've got Undead Jed, how are you? Thank you tonight to Necessary Dialogue, T-Bone, my man, and Area 54 for the 2 birthday super chats. Really appreciate the love and support. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Why? We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. And thank you to all the love in the chat room for not only my son's birthday, but my daughter getting engaged. I really appreciate that. I will definitely pass the messages from all of them, or from all of you to them. That would be wonderful. Let's bring Maya back in, because here we go with hour number 2. Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Maya Cowan is our guest. We'll bring her in here momentarily, but first we want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Scintillescent. Scintillescent is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night, right here on Spaced Out Radio. Now let's bring in scientist, anthropologist Maya Cowan, who's looking into humanity versus NHI, UFOs, UAP, whatever you want to call it. It's all right here. Maya, thank you so much for being here tonight. We greatly appreciate it.
I'm always glad to be here. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, right before the break.
I love the audience.
Yeah, they're amazing. Right before the break, we were talking about people and the way that society is going to be handling this subject. I want to continue that conversation because one of the questions that came up in our chat room from one of our listeners, Benno here, who is asking, do you think the ontological shock of disclosure would destroy civilization? And that kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about here in hour number 2.
That's a really good question. And I think it's a difficult question because ontological shock of disclosure versus ontological shock on a personal level, I think are different kinds of questions. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a student in my class who mentioned to me that she experienced ontological shock when she had an experience as a teenager. And so I think that that sort of personal, I guess on a personal level, ontological shock is absolutely very real. I'm sure many people listening have experienced it themselves or know somebody who has. And there's certainly a lot of, not necessarily trauma, but there absolutely can be trauma associated with it. And certainly there's a lot of questioning that goes on in terms of like, what is my worldview? How is my worldview shaped or been shaken? Or how can what I've experienced maybe fit into my worldview? How do I move on with this information? That's certainly very real. And I don't mean to say that it isn't real, but I'm not sure that there would be a mass ontological shock of our civilization with disclosure. And the main reason for that is because I think that there are so many people who have these experiences that are actually not necessarily experiencing ontological shock when they have this experience. So for example, when I was a child and I saw like a UFO or something in the sky when I was with my little brother, it wasn't an ontological shock because it already fit into my ontology. And there are certainly people who have experiences with something that is some sort of non-human intelligence, but they may have a religious framework that allows them to interpret that and just fold it directly into their worldview. So, for example, someone who's Muslim might experience some sort of non-human intelligence and just say, oh, that's the jinn. And it is not shocking. It might be frightening. It might be weird, but it's not necessarily shocking their ontology. Or somebody who's Christian might have a similar experience and be able to interpret that as an angel or a demon, or as an experience with God. And so, I don't mean to necessarily say that all of these things are the same thing, but I do think that, I think the other part of that question is, like, what do we mean by disclosure, right? Because certainly when you look at the way that, for example, the Soul Foundation has talked about it in terms of like ontological shock and disclosure, what they're talking about, as far as I can tell, is the government coming out and saying, listen, like, we have solid evidence that non-human intelligence is real, and here's the evidence, and everyone can look at it. Because, I mean, the government already has really come out and said non-human intelligence is real. They've come out and said that the government, whatever, but government officials have come out and said non-human intelligence is real. We are in possession of recovered craft. We're in possession of pilots of these craft and biological material. And society hasn't broken down so far. It certainly has caused a lot of ontological shock for individual people, but a lot of people just aren't paying attention. And so there's multiple considerations that I have that make me think that I do not think it will destroy our civilization. Partly because, we've already had these what I would consider major moments of disclosure from the government, and it certainly has not broken down society, certainly has caused a lot of ontological shock for individuals. But a lot of people just aren't paying attention. And I find that strange, dismaying even, that a lot of people are not paying attention. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of them aren't. And a lot of them are just in denial about it, right? So even if you present people with serious intelligence, even people who've had experiences with themselves are remarkably capable of denial. And then also this idea that I think if the government came out and said, non-human intelligence is real, and here's the proof, and everyone can look at it, and we're making it extremely public, I think a lot of people already have beliefs that would allow them to just kind of fold it into what they already know. I do think that, if the government were to come out and say, we have recovered alien craft and have made massive developments within the field of energy due to the electrogravitic reverse engineering that we've been able to do behind the scenes over these decades, and now we just have like a totally new energy source, I certainly think that would be a shock to the economy. But do I think it would destroy civilization? Probably not. I mean, the economy has gone through massive shocks before, and but if you look at disclosure on that level, that's just one aspect of disclosure, because obviously a lot of people listening here already know through their own process, whether that is an experience that they've actually had themselves or an experience that someone they know has had, or even just listening to what government officials have been saying in these hearings, for example. Like, a lot of these people already have had it disclosed to them. And so what disclosure means, I think, is a really big question that also is a part of that, and is difficult to answer because it means different things to different people. And a lot of people go through their own process of discovery that they don't need disclosure to tell them that this is real.
And normally I would agree with that. However, I remember talking to Lou Elizondo regarding this subject, right after the pandemic. And he told me, and the question I had for him was,
right,
were you guys watching, or were you guys studying at all how people were treating people during the pandemic? Okay, whether it was hoarding food, whether it was ratting out people, and I don't care what side anybody is on, whether you're pro or anti or whatever it may be. That's not the point of the conversation. But I asked him, were you watching how people were treating each other from a human aspect? Because a lot of what we saw during that time, I think, could be translated over to what would happen if all of a sudden, the president of the United States stands up at the podium and says, "My fellow Americans, we are no longer alone in the universe, and this is what we have found, whatever it may be." And he said absolutely they studied it, and there were grave concerns by the way people were treating each other, whether it was over toilet paper, whether it was over food or milk, or ratting people out because they had too many family members over at Christmas, or whatever it may be. They did study that, and they didn't like what they saw. I see disclosure, if there is such a thing. I'm more of a confirmation guy. I see disclosure as a real problem for humanity, because it will bring out it will question every religion on the planet. It will do things to the economy. It may do things to the aerospace industry. It could do things to everything from what we eat to the water we drink. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. How do people who have say suffer from anxiety and depression, how do they react to this? How do the psychopaths that walk among us, do they say, well, the aliens are coming to eat us, so I'm going to go with my little list that I've created and start taking people out? I mean, there's a lot of ontological shock that I could see going on with this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where I draw the distinction between ontological shock and like societal consequences, because I think they're different things, and they've been sort of conflated. I will say, I mean, I think all of those things are concerns, and nobody knows for sure. But I do think that the pandemic and disclosure are very, in the way I see them, but that's just my personal framework, I see them as very different, because the pandemic is like a bad thing. Like, they're like, everybody's locked, regardless of how you see the pandemic, regardless of whether you think it was a hoax or regardless of whether you believe that it was real, it's a bad thing, right? Like, either there's a virus that is killing people, or the government is using it as an excuse to lock us down. Either way, it's a bad thing, right? So no matter how you feel about it, you're going to think it's a bad thing. Like, nobody was out there thinking, oh, the pandemic, great. But, I think it certainly depends on how the government frames it, because if the government were to come out and say, listen, aliens are real and we don't know if they're hostile or not, and they might be all about to come eat us, like, certainly that is going to cause much more fear and anxiety than if the government just comes out and says, like, we have non-human intelligence. And it depends on how the message is framed, I think, because really, I think it's an interesting turn that we've seen in the last couple of years, because when I was growing up, the idea was that if there was some sort of non-human intelligence or extraterrestrials came to Earth or that sort of thing, that it would hopefully unite humanity, in fact, and that people would sort of let down their differences and say, maybe all of this isn't so important and we have to act together as a species in order to relate to this non-human intelligence. And so I think that's equally as much a possibility as that civilization ends up being destroyed. And I certainly would hope that would be the outcome. And it's also possible that it would have its consequences and then it would blow over. It's also equally possible, I think, that that more or less nothing would happen, that the economy would dip for a while and people would be freaked out, and then it would just be folded into our sort of collective consciousness.
One good thing, one bad thing that you could see coming from disclosure in Maya Cowan's thoughts?
One good thing would be what I just said, that I think a lot of people would start to maybe see a bigger picture than just our sort of petty differences or even our bigger ideological differences that really are dividing people these days. So that would be my hope. And that would be, I think that certainly that is how a lot of people would react. And obviously one bad thing would be that probably there would be certainly, I'd like to think not a lot, but there certainly would be a number of people who would be, I guess actually what the worst thing I think of, or one bad thing that you said that would happen is that people who already struggle with things like depression and anxiety and social isolation would probably maybe feel the weight of that more heavily.
Overall, how would this benefit humanity in the overall scheme of things? I mean, if we already have that technology now and it's being hidden from us, how would we be able to all of a sudden as everyday people be able to get our hands on the technology that obviously is going to fall in the hands of militaries around the world? You know, how could we get that to improve? Because look,
Yeah.
if there is technology out there, if we have that technology that could be used, and I'm going to sound very, very, utopic here for a second, but if we had that technology that could, cure diseases like cancer, or, help people with spinal cord injuries not only walk but run again and live a normal life, or people who have Alzheimer's or dementia be able to live with dignity of having their whole brain capacity functioning properly. If we already have that technology, isn't that something that the government would want to cover up?
I would hope not, but unfortunately, I don't think that that's been the case with the government. Just to be clear, when you say disclosure in this context, are you talking about like disclosure that we have some sort of reverse engineered or gifted
Right.
technology from non-human intelligence?
Let me confirm that. Okay. I believe there's a big difference between disclosure and confirmation.
Okay.
I think we are in a confirmation movement with all the chatter that is going on, that there is a phenomena out there that we do not understand and that needs thorough investigation from governments around the world, scientists around the world, because I think there's more than enough evidence to show that we may not be alone, wherever those beings are coming from. Disclosure,
gotcha.
for me, is the absolute opening up of Pandora's box that sits in the Pentagon, a place like the Pentagon or the Vatican, where everything is disclosed, because I do believe that there are enough secrets out there, okay, whether it's Roswell, whether it's Kecksburg, whether it's Marfa Lights, whether it's Bob Lazar, or whether it's Eisenhower meeting with aliens. To me, that is disclosure if those doors open. That includes the technology that they may or may not have and are keeping from humanity, whether it's to improve human life, whether it's to improve our well-being or even our future. Because let's face it, the military wants all the toys for themselves. That's why we are in a military-industrial complex. And they are going to hold on to those toys as long as they can. Like people could sit there and say, well, fiber optics came from aliens. Did it? We don't know. Did, one of the questions that I have, how do we go from propeller planes in World War II to 6 years later developing an aircraft that will eventually fly Mach 3.2 plus and be able to have stealth technology with the SR-71 and the A-12. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen between that end of World War II and 1960 that doesn't make sense to me. To me, disclosure is much different than what we are in, what I call now the confirmation movement.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. That's helpful to understand the difference. So, I guess my question is then, if we were to have any disclosure, it would probably be, to say the least, extremely disruptive. And I will say I have questions about the same things as you do. you can say technology advances exponentially, but there's plenty of examples when that's not been true. Technology, I believe, also often comes in major bursts and things like that. I don't know. It's definitely, it's a difficult question. I don't think anybody really has the answer per se, but I guess my cop out answer is, why would they disclose that? If they do have this technology, then it's in their best interest to just shut up about it and keep it quiet and to continue this pattern, because they're making money off of it. And if people knew that it existed and that it did have all of this potential for humanity's benefit, then they would certainly be upset and maybe there would be a catastrophe. So my question is, if they were to release all of that information all of a sudden and open Pandora's box, as you said, it's just, I don't see why they would do that within our current framework. And I think it would probably take some serious whistleblowing, to say the least, in order to do that. But I do think there are a lot of interesting, I would say that is what motivates a lot of scientists and engineers to study the UAP phenomenon, and not just the UAP phenomenon as far as like, what is out there in the sky and how do we observe and characterize and classify it. But there are a lot of engineers as well who are looking at things like, how do we possibly do anti-gravity technology, and how do we possibly figure out electrogravitics once and for all, and all of these things, and free energy. And so there are a lot of people who are working on this from a civilian perspective. And so I don't know necessarily how close any of them are, but I will say, I think that that's probably our best shot, is that if the military can engineer it or reverse engineer it, then with enough resources and brain power and dedication, then I believe that civilians would be able to reverse engineer it as well. I mean, also there's the question of things like the UAP Disclosure Act. If that were to ever pass, that would certainly potentially open up a lot of that technology to public information and public use, and not just be kept under lock and key by the military. So there's a lot of questions there, but someone in the chat said energy only $99.99, if only.
But it is a lot of ugly questions. It really is a lot of ugly
It
questions
is, yeah.
that sometimes you need to be able to ask those ugly, hard questions, because if you believe the narrative that is going on, that there is ET technology being hidden, and that the U.S. government knows a lot more than what they are saying, then there is a lot of questions that need to be asked pertaining to this subject. If you were to ask, because we got about a minute to go here, if you were to ask one question that you want answered, what would that question be?
Two-part question, I suppose.
Perfect.
Do you have recovered craft? And if so, what exactly have you reverse engineered from it? And get a real answer. I suppose that's always the caveat, is like the real answer. Because, we've heard a lot of stuff, but what has really been revealed is like, there's a believe it when you see it quality to it all as well.
Well, on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, Maya. Hard to believe we're already 90 minutes through this. We got 30 minutes left with Maya Cowan here on Spaced Out Radio. She's an anthropologist. We're looking into the UFO/UAP/NHI/ET/time traveler topics. And we'll be right back.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
I wanted to reply to the person in the chat who said they might reply, yes, we gave you the Big Mac, but I can't because I'm not logged into YouTube. Anyway, I think that's the plot of the movie Mac and Me.
I love it. I love it.
The McDonald's sponsored Alien ET ripoff, for anybody who doesn't know.
One second here. There we go. Sorry about that. All right, let's go like this. Like this. Where's your closest Taco Bell?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have celiac, so I can't eat Taco Bell, but
Oh, you
there's
poor
one by
thing.
the Walmart I just went to.
My closest is Kamloops.
I
You know
lived
how
in
much that hurts
Victoria.
me?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of how far 100 Mile House is from Kamloops, but I used to live in Victoria, and the closest was Nanaimo. So it was like a big thing every time we drove up island, we'd get Taco Bell.
I started my radio career in Parksville, Qualicum Beach, and
Oh,
Nanaimo.
nice.
Yeah, Matthew Gutka, how you doing? Yeah, I loved visiting the island. I hated living on the island.
That's extremely fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I just always felt trapped.
You kind of are trapped sometimes when BC Ferries is acting up.
Right?
Yeah. It's funny talking to people, I guess, who've never lived on the island, because sometimes they're like, oh my God, I went to Victoria and I saw an orca. And it's like, that it is so beautiful and majestic, but I've taken so many BC ferries in my life that I've seen a lot of them over the years.
I lived on the island for 2 years, never saw one whale.
Really? I guess I'm just lucky.
I got so ripped off. Didn't matter whether I was visiting Tofino or Comox or Victoria or Parksville or Nanaimo. I never saw a whale. I did see probably
You did
the
get ripped
coolest
off.
coolest things I saw was I saw a pod of about 400 porpoises swimming in front of the ferry. That was kind of cool. And
That is cool.
And the same thing with sea lions or seals, whatever. I don't know I can't tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, I think I've only seen sea lions once. It was on Hornby Island,
Yeah.
but it was really cool. There was a bunch of them.
I loved the amount of bald eagles.
That's true.
That-
All
that
along
were-
the coast.
Oh, man. The amount of bald eagles. You can't go anywhere on Vancouver Island without seeing bald eagles. And I'm not talking one or two. I'm talking 30 or 40.
Yeah, there's a bunch. I guess I was gonna say a couple months ago, but I guess it was more than that now. It was like the I think it was the football game before the Super Bowl, but I don't really follow football, so I can't really remember. I just remember that my partner and I were walking our dog in the park, and there was a bald eagle in one of the trees, and this guy pointed it out to us, and he was like, the last time I saw a bald eagle in this park, it was a Philly Eagles game, and it was the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl. And so this is a good omen, because there's a Phillies game today, or an Eagles game.
Oh, nice.
And I bet they're going to win. We looked it up. They did win. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, we get quite a few bald eagles here.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot all over BC.
It was so cool. Like 2 weeks ago, my dad was up here. He wanted to go into the forest, and finally he saw a moose in the wild. He
Oh,
was
that's
so
awesome.
excited. He was so excited he scared the thing off from about 300 yards away. It was hilarious. Thank you to Deborah Rooney, T-Bone, Area 54 ×2, and Necessary Dialogue for the great super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support. And don't forget, you can shop, and little Timmy Senior too. Thank you, buddy. Don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Why? We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag, so make sure you check it on out. Here we go in like 7 seconds. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you here. My name is Dave Scott. Our guest is scientist Maya Cowan. She's an anthropologist. We're talking UFOs, aliens, and people on this planet. It's a great conversation. You might want to check out the archives if you're tuning in late. Remember, they are always free. Reminder to you, that those archives are free on YouTube or any major podcast network. The only thing I ask for in return, hit subscribe. I think that's a fair trade. You get free archives, I get your follow. It's fair. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Maya Cowan is here. She's an anthropologist from Binghamton University. Via British Columbia, she's one of us here in studio, and we love her around here. Maya, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Before we get to any more audience questions here, I want to ask you, do you think, back to the disclosure topic, that it has to be the United States of America who discloses? Could Canada disclose, or Great Britain, or France, or Portugal, or any other Western civilization and get that impact?
That is a really good question. I mean, certainly anybody who's not the United States could disclose. Sorry, I'm not sure it would necessarily have the same impact globally as the United States disclosing, because certainly, as we've seen, even just with recent world events, anything the United States does has ripples across the global economy and the global geopolitical state. All of these things are still really, really heavily influenced by the US. So certainly, say, let's take Canada, because even though I live in the US now, I know a lot more about Canada. If the Canadian government, if Mark Carney were to, for the Americans, that's the Canadian Prime Minister, if Mark Carney were to come out tomorrow and say, this is what all of the Canadian government has, and this is what all of the defense contractors that we have working for us, this is what they have, and, here it all is, like, we're letting it all out. I certainly think it would have an impact. I certainly think people would pay attention. It's not that I don't think that necessarily that news would reach the United States and maybe even pressure them to release what they have. But I don't think it would necessarily have the same impact. I think that, it would, I just don't know. I think that if any country were to do it, it would be hard for other countries not to follow without seeming like they're lying.
I can see that happening too.
But, also there's such a state of disinformation today that I think there's a strong possibility that if any country discloses, that the rest of the world could just say, they're lying, that's disinformation. So I think that's kind of something that really muddies the waters also in the disclosure movement. And frankly, I think it's the reason why a lot of people haven't been paying attention to what you call the confirmation movement that's been going on right now with all the whistleblowers and congressional hearings in the United States, is that I think there's just so much disinformation that gets put out there that a lot of people are frankly just kind of tuned out, unfortunately. And they're much more mentally willing to just write it off as disinformation. And I'm not entirely sure that some of it isn't disinformation, but I don't think all of it is. And I think there's a lot of people who are kind of just tuning it out for that reason. There's a lot of people who are tuning a lot of things out these days. And I can't blame them.
No, I don't blame them either. That's why we do our show at nighttime, because people have been hammered with media all day. From the time they wake up on social media, regular media, radio, newspapers, television, all
Yeah.
day, that we provide a break for them from reality. And that's why we love what we do around here so much in what we do. In regards to the subject, I know I get a lot of questions from our listeners. What's the truth? Where can we find true answers for what is going on? Because everybody seems to be pulling in this subject from a different string. Whether over the last year and a half, 2 years especially, we've really been watching these cliques form in ufology that people are paying attention to, whether it's the Soul Foundation, which you're a part of, whether it's the Jesse Michaels YouTube crowd, whether it's, Avi Loeb's team or Gary Nolan or whoever it may be. There seems to be a lot of these different cliques that have popped up trying to all move in the same direction, but just seem to be confusing a lot of people who are trying to pay attention. Where can we find the truth to what truly is going on, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, when you said cliques are forming or have formed, I mean, that's exactly where my mind was originally going as well. I'm not actually a member of the Soul Foundation, but I attended their first conference.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay. It just, I don't want to speak for them. I don't have any affiliation with them. But yeah, I just didn't want it to come across that I was speaking for them or on behalf of them, because I don't have any affiliation with them. But I think that's what makes it so difficult, right? Is that all of these groups, there are groups that have existed for decades and decades, like MUFON, and then there are groups that have popped up in just the last couple of years. Like the Soul Foundation has only been around since 2023, like less than 2 years, I think. And so it's difficult because, like you said, who do you believe? Where do you find the truth? I'll be honest, I don't think any one of these groups really has the truth. I think some of them posture like they have the truth and, that they are the ones who really know what's going on. But I think that back to our conversation about where there's been this sort of traditional split within ufology or UAP studies or the phenomenon in general between like the nuts and bolts people and the experiencer side of things, is that, I mean, there's just similar splits that are happening all the time. And I'm sure that a lot of these groups have bits and pieces of the truth, but I don't think any one of them really knows like what is going on here in the big picture. And so it's easy to get taken in, I think, by one particular group saying, we know what's going on here. So, I mean, I guess like what I would say that I try to do is just listen to people who have entirely different viewpoints from one another and try to sort of synthesize what I think the middle ground is that people are talking about. And, perhaps to filter out some of what's more obviously not true, because I think that anybody with any level of critical thinking can listen to certain things and say, I don't know that that's true, or maybe I'll do some more looking into that, as well as just, critical that's critical thinking in general. Like if you hear something and you're not quite so sure about it, or it's not being explained to you how something works, then I think it's worth looking into those things. And I think that a lot of times, frankly, and this is true of a lot of groups and a lot of different things that a lot of different people believe, is that, people in general who speak authoritatively on things and don't explain them sort of just expect you to take their word for it based on some sort of innate authority that they say that they have. And that happens a lot in this space, right? So if people are telling you but not showing you anything, then I think that that's like a little bit suspect, I suppose. And that happens on all sides and all cliques of ufology.
Right on. Let's get to another audience question here. Let's go to Art over on LinkedIn. And Art's an experiencer. I heard him speak at UFOCon earlier this year, and he was absolutely amazing. And he's asking, what truths must we unlearn before we're capable of recognizing disclosure when it happens? And if truth is shared and no one is ready to receive it, has disclosure really occurred?
Yeah, to get to the second part of your question first, Art, and I'd love to, if there's a recording of that, please send it to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. That's really the only social media I'm on today. But if truth is shared and no one is around to receive it, has disclosure really occurred? I mean, I guess that's a perfect way of what I was trying. You said it better than I did, of what I was trying to get at by saying that I think it's challenging that there's so many people who are just like tuned out of this. And I think that that is unfortunately one of the, or fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, because I guess it's better than catastrophe. But I think that that's one of the possible outcomes of disclosure that wouldn't be catastrophe, is just that there seem to be already within the confirmation movement so many people who are just willing to just say like, well, it's not true, or to just tune it out, or to outright dismiss it. So I would say if truth is shared and no one is ready to receive it, has disclosure really occurred? I don't know. Great question. Probably not. What truths must we unlearn before we're capable of recognizing disclosure when it happens? Now that is, yeah, that's a broad question. And I think the answer probably, as I often, it sounds like a cop out, but it's just my anthropologist. There are many different peoples of many different ontologies and cultures, brain thinking, is it probably really depends on different people, right? And what their truths are that are blocking them from accepting perhaps like a greater reality or a greater phenomenon or a greater sort of shared human experience. Because there's definitely a lot of people, for a lot of different reasons, have their different blocks, right? There are people who are so scientifically minded, let's say, or so like in their lane of just saying like, no, science is real, and if there's anything that science can't explain, or if there's anything that falls outside of our current knowledge within hard sciences, then it's not true and it's not real. And for a lot of people, that seems to be a major block. And there's a lot of people who are extremely religious and who have their block of saying like, well, no, this is my religion, and if something falls outside of that in any way, then it's not real, because it's not a part of my religion, or it doesn't fit neatly within the box of my religion. So that's or there's even completely secular people who are just who just have their set ways and their beliefs and their mental framework for things, and they are they're just ready to say no. If it's not already kind of what I believed or how I was raised, I don't believe it. So
let's move to another question here. Let's go over to Lotus. Is there an example of indigenous knowledge experience with UAP that you could give?
Yeah, so I'm not indigenous, so I don't really feel like it's my knowledge to give. But I could certainly point you in the direction of some indigenous scholars who have shared a lot of knowledge and experience. I mean, certainly there's a lot of religious people who've shared experiences, but the work of Artie Six Killer Clark in particular, or her name is escaping me, Sonia Adelaide. There was a special edition of the Journal of American Indigenous Studies, or Journal of American Indian Studies, I think is what the journal is called. They did an entire special issue about, it's not really, it was more about like SETI, but they wrote an entire special issue of that journal with different indigenous scholars on indigenous perspectives on SETI. Yeah, so that, I guess that's my question. I don't really like have any specific indigenous perspective to share because I'm not indigenous, but I would say those are two great places to start.
Let's move over to Brendan here. Where do you see plasmoid production going in the USA versus other countries? I don't know what this has to do with our topic. Maybe you can, if you want to take a shot at it, great. If not, we'll move on.
I honestly just don't know enough about it, especially enough about other countries. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer for that,
problem.
but I'd like to learn.
Super Crazy's asking, do you think aliens created humanity?
Personally, no. I don't think so. I think aliens have been interacting with humanity for thousands of years, or UAP or NHI or whatever you want to call it. But no, I don't think that, unless, there's a possibility. I think if aliens created humanity, it was probably through a process of directed panspermia rather than that they just like built us and put us here, if that makes sense.
In a perfect world, where do you see ufology going, say, within the next 365 days?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say in a perfect world, I would like to see more collaboration or amalgamation of all of these disparate, separate, different groups that exist, because I think that, it's understandable that everyone kind of has I think everyone who's creating these groups, or most people, see a need within the space that they don't see as being filled by one of the existing groups. And so they have an idea to start a new group. And I think that that's fair, because not in all cases, but a lot of times there's a lot of already like in groups or, like charismatic leaders within specific groups in ufology. And so I can understand the impulse to say, okay, it's time to create a new group to answer this question or to bring this issue or to bring this problem into it. But I think that in the next 365 days, my ideal answer would be that I would like to see more amalgamation and collaboration between these groups. Like, I don't think we need 500 different groups that are possibly repeating each other's work or coming up with the same sorts of questions. But, maybe some people have a piece of the puzzle about how do we look at this particular topic, and other people have a different piece of the puzzle about how do we look at this topic. And if they're not talking to each other, then it's just like a classic silo problem. And that certainly seems to have happened a lot so far. And I think there's a greater recognition, certainly within the field of UAP studies, probably within ufology in general, that we need to be talking to each other more across these sort of cliques, as you said, or different groups, and possibly thinking about merging and collaborating. And as I talked about earlier, I think that ideally we would also see the emergence of more interdisciplinary projects that can look at how can we integrate and truly create like a new project that actually incorporates and maybe comes up with new methodologies even that incorporate the knowledge of somebody in physics and somebody in psychology and experiencers and their lived information and collaboration. And there hasn't been a lot of that. So I guess I would like to see us trying to break down those silos more, is my basic answer.
Out of all the stories you have heard over the years, is there a story that really sticks out to you that just had a profound effect on maybe you thinking, this is why I'm doing this? It's not one particular story per se. I mean, I guess it is a particular story, but I'm not sure if I should share it. But I'll say there's one particular person who reached out to me very early on when I was doing this research, and I was kind of just like, I hadn't done very many interviews yet. Certainly not as many as I have now, but I was kind of putting it out there of like, hey, I'm studying this. So if anybody is interested, like, I want this to be an ethnography. I want to be involved in the community. I want to hear people's stories. And he reached out to me on LinkedIn and told me this story. He has photographs of this UAP encounter that was from like the 90s, I want to say.
and shared the photos. And he said that for all of these years, he was with another person even when it happened, that he's just been like categorically dismissed by everyone. You know, he's been told he's schizophrenic, and he's not schizophrenic, for having this one encounter with like a craft. And I just thought that that was like profoundly sad and not okay and disappointing of humanity and the mental health field in general and all of this stuff. But he was, now I just sound like I'm, but like he was just excited to be able to share it with somebody who believed him, and to kind of find out that this community existed. And I guess that that is like the main benefit I think I see of anybody doing this work, is being able to just kind of normalize the conversation a little bit, because it definitely wasn't normalized when I was growing up. Like, I guess I was just didn't care enough that like all of my friends knew that I was into UFOs or whatever. But you know, for most of my adult life, I never told anybody that. And you know, I never talked to, you know, so many people in my life about it. And I think that, yeah, just normalizing the conversation is really just the most important thing. Actually, I will say really quickly, and actually, so this is from a family member of mine in Quesnel, actually. And so she told me this story from the 80s that, and like this is a relative of mine, and she reached out to me after she saw me post something on Facebook about like maybe this show or something. She hadn't told anybody this since the 80s, that her and her two daughters, so also my relatives, along with another family, saw a craft land in their backyard. And like it was just outside of Quesnel. And you know, they were like probably, she said, like 20 miles from the nearest neighbor, kind of, you know, really rural area. But they saw a craft land in their yard and then take off and fly away. And she said that she told a couple of people at the time, and everyone just called her crazy. And she never told anybody again until she saw that I was like studying UFOs, and she was so excited to tell me. So that's my story.
And there are thousands of stories
Thousands.
like that.
Yeah, probably.
You know, all because somebody laughed instead of saying, "I believe you."
Totally.
Imagine how many more locations that we would know of landings or multiple people being taken at once, if we actually didn't laugh at it.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is a very detailed story. I mean, I didn't get into it because I know we're almost at the break, but you know, so that's my one story, I guess, is, yeah.
We have less than a minute to go here with you. And you know what? You were once again fantastic on Spaced Out Radio, Maya. And I wanted to say a big thank you for coming back on the show. We really appreciate it. And I will extend the invite. Anytime you feel that you want to come on, you just let our booking agent Klaus know, and we're going to get you on. You're amazing.
Thank you so much, Dave. I had a lot of fun, as always. And I love, sometimes it's a little bit distracting, but I love looking in the chat.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing, our chatters on YouTube. If you're listening on the radio side, come to the YouTube side every now and again. Come join the chat room. It's a lot of fun. And Maya, hopefully we get to see you this summer if you come back to British Columbia. That would be great. And so stay in touch. Maya Cowan from Binghamton University. She's an anthropologist, very much involved in the UFO UAP study. We're glad to have her back on Spaced Out Radio. In hour 3 next, we're going to kick things off with Swamp Dweller. Then little Timmy James has the UFO report. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
You were amazing. Absolutely amazing.
thanks, Dave, and thanks everyone. Yeah, the person who said I don't ever remember it being this hot, I'm dying over here. Yeah, I told Dave before the show, but I was like almost afraid I was going to be late because we had to go to Walmart and buy another fan because we were like, this is untenable. It's terrible.
Come to the Caribou. The mosquitoes aren't bad this year.
That's good. I don't remember ever getting bit by a mosquito in New York, but I got eaten alive in New Jersey the other day.
You take care, my friend. We'll
Yes.
talk soon.
Thank you. Bye,
Take
everyone.
care. Maya Cowan, everybody. She's amazing. I'll be right back. let us say hello to little Tibby James. And we're 18 seconds away. Thank you to T-Bone ×2, Sweet Tony D, Tim, Debaruni, Necessary Dialogue in Area 54 on his birthday with a pair of super chats. Greatly appreciate the love. Here comes the third and final hour. Here comes hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight. Great show with Maya Cowan the first 2 hours. What a treat to have her on the air. The anthropologist from Binghamton University. She is great, fantastic, especially on the UFO subject. Hi, I want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Scintillescent. Scintillescent is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. The events of this story took place around the autumn months of 2014. I'm not sure what would have happened if my mom hadn't heard this person, but either way, I'm grateful she did. To help paint a better picture of the events I'm about to describe to you, I must first briefly explain the basic layout of my home. There are 3 entrances to my home, the front, side, and the back door, which was in what was my bedroom at the time. The back door has a glass window that allows a perfect view of a 1/4 acre of our backyard. This might not seem like much, but living in Salem, Oregon, that's as good as you're gonna get. To access the backyard, you must first walk down the driveway on the left side of the house, leaving you visible to the next door neighbors. This is also where our brittle side door from the 1940s lie. At the end of the driveway is our garage, and to the right of that, our backyard, as unfortunately, there was no gate at the time, but this incident and several others like it led us up to putting one up, and we also put up a roughly 7-foot tall fence. Now that you know the basic layout of my home, you're probably noticing the potential for something sinister to happen. And happen it did, my friends. But one thing for certain is it could have gone a lot worse. This incident took place in the early hours of 2 or 3 a.m. As I've always been a hardcore insomniac, I'd probably be the president if there was a club. Anyways, I was watching YouTube on my tablet as most 13-year-olds do, when I'm startled by a beam of light illuminating the garage doors in my periphery. Before I even turned my head to look, I had already come to the following conclusions. 1. The familiar circle beam of light was a flashlight, and 2. I had a Henry, .22 caliber survival rifle under my bed that I used for target practice just in case. Thank God my family's a gun family. I decided to wait to see who it was, and to see where this light was coming from, as it wasn't uncommon for our neighbor to come into our yard looking for his cat. It's a good thing I did too, because the flashlight was attached to the business end of a 9mm handgun held by a uniformed police officer complete with a ballistics vest, taser, baton, and radio. Confused, I leave my bedroom expecting to see my mom sitting on the couch watching her favorite TV show, Bones. Instead, I saw my mother on the tips of her toes leaning over the kitchen sink, looking out the window, and peering, trying to see a view of the officer, slowly and methodically creeping his way up the driveway and up to our garage. Yep, he's definitely here for us, I thought as I began to ask my mom what was going on. Apparently less than 15 feet away from my bed, a homeless person high on who knows what had snuck into our backyard and accidentally kicked our glass recycling bin, alerting my mom, who was in the basement doing laundry. My mom tells me she then looked out the basement window, and she saw this person making some kind of stance One would be to try to balance on a board. It was strange. Almost like the stance a child would do when they're out of bed at late hours of the night trying to be sneaky to fetch a snack. Regardless of their feeble attempts at being stealthy, my mom had seen them, and they must have caught on to it, because by the time my mom went upstairs to retrieve her phone and dial 911, and an officer finally arrived, they were all gone. The cop told us that no one was in our garage or the backyard, and I could almost feel the anxiety lift off my mother's shoulders. Even more so when the officer offered to send someone over to survey the house until sunrise. So just to clarify, and to kind of make you understand why we ended up getting security cameras and a fence in the backyard and a motion detector light, was that this guy easily got into our yard, could have easily broken into our house, and done who knows what to our family. I'm just glad it didn't come down to that.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another creepy story. If you want more just like that, head on over to his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Swamp Dweller. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and you got thousands of stories to choose from. Just like that. Let's go to the UFO report.
That is an interplanetary flying space saucer. You have made me very angry. Very angry indeed.
Little Timmy James back in the hot seat on the UFO report. And Tim, we're glad to have you here after a little bit of a weird weekend out at Flight 21 for you and I, but let's give a quick update of what's going on there, my man.
Nothing at all. There's nothing to see here. No, it was different again. And I'm going through and I'm sequencing everything and stuff, and it's going to be a good video, but yeah, different energy out there this time around. And when we first arrived there, it was pretty heavy. It was like, man, Dave looked at me and said, I don't know if we should get out. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm in agreement. It was weird, but I think that whatever was out there was like, oh, it's Tim and Dave, and they kind of everything settled down. But yeah, interesting Saturday evening for a solstice, for summer solstice as well.
Yeah, it was a weird energy out there where it was like nobody really wanted us, or nothing there really wanted us there. It's almost like something upset the area prior to that. And in fact, we started filming going into the crash site area, and immediately I got this strong message in my head, like we needed to turn the camera off now. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I know you got that part on camera. We could kind of play that in the next series that we have. But
yeah,
I want to say to people, one of the things that Tim and I do, when we have these experiences, we try to recreate them.
Yes.
And there were a couple of instances from prior videos with the shadow being, mm-hmm. and then the face up in the trees.
Yeah.
We could not recreate them. We could not recreate them at all.
Nope.
And we tried.
Oh,
we tried.
Unbelievably. Like, Dave was relentless. We were comparing photos and trying to get geometric angles from where I was standing, and I captured that face in the trees and stuff. And it was, Dave was just like a dog on a bone with it. And when we couldn't do it, we took pictures, we looked up, we measured, and I could not duplicate it whatsoever. So interesting in the least.
Right. And then probably the weirdest part for me this past weekend was we talked about the quarter that disappeared a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because we took a dime, we replaced a quarter, we went back, the quarter was gone. We thought it might have been somebody human who took it. And then we go back to the site to check if the marbles are still there, which they are. Mm-hmm. Neither of us see the quarter. We go back about half an hour, not even half an hour later, maybe 15 minutes later, to go move some other things back to the new gifting site.
Mm-hmm.
And I look down, and the quarter is sitting within the shrubs.
No word of a lie. That was shocking to say the least. I was totally blown away by it. But we did put the quarter back over at the gifting site. We did give the Sasquatch's loonie back. And I think that just kind of mellowed the rest of the evening out.
I'm going to talk to Robin Haynes about that
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow night. We need to figure that out.
Definitely.
We need to figure that out. But I know you're working on getting the video out. Normally, we've been putting them out late Sunday nights. We're going to try and put them out a little bit earlier than that, especially during the week or even on a weekend. We're going to try and get them out earlier for you, so that way we can do a little bit better presentation on everything. So I think that's partially our fault in what we're learning here, why a lot of people are missing it. But if you want to check out our little series that Tim and I have been doing, go on to the Spaced Out Radio YouTube channel, scroll on down till you find Secrets of the Forest, and we've got 3 videos up there. They are amateur. Let's just warn people. They are very amateur because that's the way we want it. Okay, we don't want a big editing production. We want it to look as natural as possible. So there's a lot of rough footage in there, and hopefully you like it. Let us know in the comments on the videos. We'd greatly appreciate it, and especially if you spot something.
Mm-hmm.
If you hear a sound or you spot something, time it out for us on those videos. We're going to go back and check it on out, but we're going to try and have some fun with it as well. Interesting UFO news today. What would you do for $100,000, Tim?
Well, I don't know what I do, but I know Jesse Michaels is offering the big bucks for Sean Kirkpatrick to interview or to be interviewed by him on his podcast. So interesting. In a bold move that has stirred the UFO community, podcaster and venture capitalist Jesse Michaels has publicly offered a substantial sum to interview Sean Kirkpatrick, the former director of Arrow. Michaels, the host of American Alchemy podcast, is keen to discuss Kirkpatrick's role in recent Wall Street Journal articles that claim the U.S. military spread UFO myths to conceal advanced weapons programs. So the offer reportedly started at about $50,000 and potentially has climbed up to $100,000. Comes with a single condition: the interview must be unedited and to ensure transparency. So the buzz around this potential interview stems from Kirkpatrick's controversial tenure at Arrow, where he led investigations into UFOs from 2022 until his departure in December of 2023. The Wall Street Journal reported that Kirkpatrick's team uncovered evidence of the Pentagon using disinformation, including staged UFO sightings and fake anti-gravity vehicle photos, to obscure classified projects since the Cold War. These revelations have sparked heated debate, with critics like Michaels questioning Kirkpatrick's narrative that many UFO sightings are merely misidentified drones or experimental tech. Some in the UFO community view Kirkpatrick as a skeptic pushing and debunking agenda, while others see his findings as exposing government manipulation. Michaels, known for his deep dives into fringe topics, has been vocal about challenging Kirkpatrick's claims. His podcast has previously featured discussions on UFOs, including an interview with Harold Malmgren, and that touched on sensitive government projects. The proposed interview aims to unpack Kirkpatrick's assertions, particularly the claim that the Pentagon secrecy fueled decades of UFO mythology. However, skepticism surrounds whether Kirkpatrick will accept, with some speculating he might avoid questions about firsthand evidence of non-human intelligence or craft. So the UFO community right now is abuzz with anticipation, as this interview could either reinforce Kirkpatrick's findings or expose cracks in his official narrative. No confirmation has surfaced on whether Kirkpatrick will take the offer, but Michael's high-stakes challenge has already ignited discussion about transparency and truth in the UFO debate. For now, all eyes are on whether this blockbuster interview will come to fruition. That's a lot of cash.
It is a lot of cash. And I talked to Walter M. Sterling about this just earlier before this show on Sterling Every Damn Night on WPHT in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about this. And the one thing that as journalists, we never do is we never pay for an interview.
Right.
That way the interview remains unbiased and everything like that. I think the reason why Jesse Michaels, and I could be assuming here, I think the big reason why he's able to offer that $100,000 is for a couple of reasons. Number one, his show is sponsored.
Right.
Number two, the amount of views he would get off of that interview would probably pay more than the $100,000.
Oh, no question.
Like
No
that
question.
one would go at least a couple million views. And I think that that's probably the reason why he was offering up that money, or he may be offering it up knowing that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick would never take him up on it.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. But the thing, I have, well, I shouldn't say, I have a dislike for Dr. Kirkpatrick, and that's just me. But to put a positive on it, I don't think that he's a coward when it comes to being confronted. I'm not saying that he tells the truth, and I'm not saying that he doesn't present a false narrative. All I'm saying is he doesn't seem like he's not meek. Like, to me, he may show up to it and go, okay, let's do this thing. Right. And that would be phenomenal. I'd love to see it. But I don't think that he's too worried about it. He may just be saying, like you say, man, I don't want $100,000. I don't need it. And I don't want to be on there. I'm not a sideshow. So it'll be interesting. I really hope that this comes up, because I'd like to see it and gloves off and just let her rip.
So would I. I would love to see that too. And I think what has to happen is, I don't see Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick taking that interview. I really don't.
No.
Okay. I mean, it's a great publicity stunt, if that's all it is. Although we do know that Jesse Michaels can and would put his money where his mouth is.
Sure.
The guy's a multimillionaire himself. And still, even if you're a multimillionaire, $100,000 is a lot of money.
Oh, of course.
So I think he would be relying heavily on YouTube paying him back on that video because of the exposure it would get. I mean, think about it. If a media outlet grabs that interview, what they're going to do is they are going to probably have to pay for the exclusivity of that interview. And if they do that, that's going to eat up a chunk. Advertising would eat up a chunk. And the amount of downloads and views that video would get, he'd probably make a couple $100,000 off that one video. I mean, if you look at high quality influencers, that's how they make their money. You look at Mr. Beast, for instance, he's making anywhere between a couple million to $10 million a video that he puts out once every couple weeks.
That's nuts.
I mean, that's pretty much what he's banking on.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think the bad side would be of Kirkpatrick going on that show?
I don't know. I've seen some of Jesse's stuff, and full disclosure, I haven't seen a ton of it, but he's antagonistic at times, which, I mean, I think most journalists are, well, he's not a journalist. Shouldn't say that, but I think that most people are when they come to questioning, but he does put a little bit of showmanship and a little bit of clownness in it. I don't know how serious he would be. And the thing is too, the other negative is Kirkpatrick, give me my $100,000 and I'm just going to answer the questions the way I've always answered the questions. So is it going to be a nothing burger and he's going to get to pocket $100,000? That could be the negative. Or is it going to be a bit of a sideshow and a circus with Jesse Michaels being a bit of a turd about it, right? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go either. I mean, I think that Jesse is a smart businessman.
He is.
I do. I may not like the approach. I've been highly critical about the control of the narrative.
Yes.
But on this case, what great publicity that he's doing for himself. He knows Kirkpatrick cannot do that show.
Yeah.
Even if he offered $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Because, some of the ways that he was prescribing the interview on X was that it cannot be edited. What is said is done, which I really respect.
Sure.
By the way. Okay. And Kirkpatrick needs to answer some questions.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to be willing to answer those questions rather than sit there, twiddling his thumbs trying to dodge any questions that might cost him his NDA or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I don't think Kirkpatrick is going to do it. As you could throw as much money as you want at him. I think he is, and I'm going to use these terms, and that you and I have been steadfast against his support when he was with Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the long run, the man's a patriot first.
Mm-hmm.
He is a government employee second. And number 3, he's not the kind of guy, he's so deep in, he's not the kind of guy who would ever risk his NDA for publicity. He's already shown that numerous times by, lying about, let's say, Brandon Fugel.
Mm-hmm.
The Brandon Fugel story is the one that keeps sticking out to me, where he literally went on there and said, I've never met Brandon Fugel of the Skinwalker Ranch. And yet Fugel shows pictures on X of him breaking down what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch in front of Sean Kirkpatrick.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Interesting. And and I just look at it like this guy, he is the ultimate Chief Wiggum from The Simpsons. There's nothing to see here.
No, for
nothing
sure.
to see here at all. And he doesn't want to show anybody. You could tell he doesn't like the spotlight.
No.
So why would he?
Exactly.
And
the other thing though is
$100,000.
I know. And I don't know if he would actually be allowed. Like you say, he's got NDAs and stuff like that, but there's still people out there that have got their hands on his shoulder going, we're not gambling with that. I'm sure of it. So I think always
though,
that.
on the flip side though, like Area 54 in our chat room says, the financial offer from Jesse Michaels makes me really ill. How far out of whack have we all become where that kind of offer and being made so publicly is considered okay?
Yeah.
Like I said, I think it's a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
Journalistically, there's no integrity to it whatsoever.
Oh, no.
There is none. But I think it's something where it's to push the buttons.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely a move to push the buttons. It's a brilliant advertising move for Jesse Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be the most professional, but you know what? That's what YouTube is all about now.
Yes.
It's about the names. It's about getting who you can. And if you're going to pay somebody to do it, you pay them to do it.
And
so
get chatter started.
You don't have to like it.
No.
I don't like it any more than you do. The UFO Report with Tim James continues right after this.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're clear.
I knew you would.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, interesting.
You are hilarious.
Well, I don't know about that, but sometimes I guess I can be.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Lon. I like Lon. Like, when's the next video dropping? I was like, holy, I'm going to get to it. seem to be more people on his camp that are wanting to dive into it, eh?
Right?
I love it. It's awesome.
I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I think that and it's nice because I mean, obviously we're getting some outside outside opinions and stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, this works.
I think you better be prepared for next Monday when Lon is on the show.
I know.
To actually join us.
I know.
and be there because he's going to be yapping away about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Hi, green-eyed lady. Welcome to SOR Chat. Deb had a question with her super chat.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can help out with this.
Okay.
Who are those guys in masks on your Facebook?
We're not on the radio. They're dicks. I don't know.
They're just jerks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that got on my phone, dude.
I'm kind of getting tired of them showing up. I don't know where the heck or how the heck they showed up, but they were there.
Right? I don't get it at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't get it at all. They're rude, disgusting individuals.
Oh, no question. I like Monk says, that El Phantasmo smells like cheese. He leaves or he's been around or something. I can smell it for days. It's brutal.
Oh, no problem, T-Bone. No problem. Yeah, I don't subscribe to that type of content.
There you go. Exactly.
My boy was so excited to find out about his sister getting engaged.
Oh, right on. Good birthday present for him, eh?
It was a great birthday present. Lex Diaz, how you doing? Look at Lex. Just a little sarcasm here. El Ovni Volador won't leave Dave Scott alone, my butt. What is that sarcasm there?
I don't get it.
I'm a nice individual. I'm not El Ovni Volador, people. You got to get that through your swollen skulls here.
No.
Tim, have you ever seen me as El Ovni Volador?
Not that I can recall. Nope. Never.
And I've never seen you as either El Ovni Volador or El Phantasmo. I've never seen you be a part of that.
No, we're not like 12 years old or something. Like, come on.
Right?
Play dress up.
It's ridiculous. Soundwave. Soundwave is my favorite Transformer.
Okay.
He's just got Bigfoot in his Florida swamp. Never UFOs or aliens, though. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Big thank you to Deborah Rooney with a hat trick, T-Bone ×2, Area 54 ×2, Necessary Dialogue, Tim, and Sweet Tony. Thank you for the super chats. Greatly appreciate the love. Shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, people. Why, Tim?
Because we don't have ugly swag, people.
No ugly swag. Even Tim wears it in public. That's right. Even Tim wears it in public. Here we go. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Tim James and the UFO Report continuing momentarily. But first, we want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, our archives are always free on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here's Tim James. Here is me, Dave Scott. This is the UFO Report. And, Tim, what else do you got for us tonight?
Well, we've kind of got a little bit of a follow-up on that Wall Street Journal article that came out last week. So in a recent investigation detailed by the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. Army tasked an elite defense laboratory with examining a mysterious material to determine whether it was mere scrap metal or evidence of an alien spacecraft. The inquiry, spearheaded by Arrow, aimed to settle long-standing questions about alleged extraterrestrial technology in the U.S. government's possession. The material in question, associated with claims made by the To the Stars Academy, was suspected by some to be of otherworldly origin due to its unusual properties. However, the investigation concluded that the so-called meta-material was likely nothing more than World War II-era scrap metal, casting doubt on assertions of alien technology. So the probe in part of a broader effort by Arrow to review decades of UFO-related claims spurred by high-profile allegations from figures like former Air Force intelligence officer David Grush, who suggested the U.S. had secretly recovered and reverse-engineered alien craft. The investigation, which involved interviews with dozens of current and former officials, scientists, and military contractors, as well as thousands of pages of documents, found no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology. Instead, it uncovered a history of Pentagon disinformation campaigns designed to obscure classified military projects. So since the 50s, the Defense Department has occasionally spread false stories about alien encounters to divert attention from advanced weapons programs, such as the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. One notable example involved an Air Force colonel in the 80s distributing fake UFO photos near Area 51 to fuel public speculation and distract from military tests. Arrow's findings align with its 2024 report, which stated that no government investigation, academic study, or official review has confirmed extraterrestrial technology in UFO sightings. The report highlighted how pop culture and misidentified military activities like altitude spy plane tests in the 50s and 60s fueled the UFO myths. Despite these conclusions, public fascinations with alien conspiracies persists, driven by incidents like the 1989 claims of Bob Lazar, who alleged he worked on reverse engineering alien craft at a secret facility near Area 51. So the recent investigation underscores the Pentagon's efforts to separate fact from fiction, revealing that many supposed extraterrestrial artifacts are likely terrestrial in origin, often tied to covert military operations rather than visitors from another world. So again, nothing to see here. And, there was that debate. There was that huge debate where people were going, no, the false information thing was bogus. And you got the other side of the fence going, oh yeah, they've been doing this for years. So it really didn't amount to anything. I know that Kirkpatrick, again, was not pleased with that, both articles, but what are you going to do? It's just reporting.
Well, I mean, once again, the second article, the one thing that I've seen online about it is it's only telling still half the story.
Right.
Okay, and I think it's an important story. I'm not shooting down the article whatsoever. What this is telling you is, look, there are these covert programs out there that are being falsified as UFOs /UAP /aliens. And it's American technology based out of places like Area 51. And I agree with the article wholeheartedly, but it's still not answering the fact that there is high strangeness going on, that they are looking into this very seriously, and it only tells the portions that we need to know. And trust me, we need to know this stuff. We need to know what Timothy Phillips is saying about the cover-ups, about secret weapons and programs and everything. I think it's a great hole to jump down in Alice in Wonderland type of adventure, but it's only covering part of the story.
Yeah, agreed, very much, and yeah. And it's not surprising, though. It definitely, for me, it's not surprising that it just, I guess, scratches the surface or just kind of glosses over it. And you're right. It's too bad because there's way more meat on that bone. And yeah, they're just kind of, again, as always, just throwing us the little crumbs, and they're keeping the rest for themselves.
And maybe that's the deflection.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the deflection that they are looking for, is that if they can cover this up saying it's all American technology, then they don't need to worry. Maybe those who are on the fence will say, see, told you there was no UFOs.
Yeah.
And that's maybe what they want to try and hide the remainder of the technologies that they have recovered. There's too many people out, whether you believe the whistleblowers or not. There's too much information out there to be in denial that there is something being covered up. We don't know what that is. We don't know where it's located. We know nothing. We're just going by words of what people have said. But there's too many people telling that story. And it's not just the ones in the cliques. Okay? There's others who are speaking. And most of those people who are speaking about it will not go on the record. I have people that I can call right now that will not go on the record about this, but they'll say, Dave, here's your rabbit hole. Go down it.
Sure.
So that's
Fun.
pretty much it. It's half a story. It's a good story, but it's half a story.
Yeah, you are correct, sir. So, did you know what today is? It's an anniversary of some sort.
Hold
78 years.
78 years. So that would take us 2025 minus 70 would be 19. Hold on.
Okay.
That would be 1955. 1955 minus 8 would be 1943.
47.
47, sorry.
That's all right.
So 47, is that Kenneth Arnold?
Yes, all in the same envelope. So it's 78 years of the Maury Island incident in Washington State. Is it today? So today, in 1947, the tranquil waters of Puget Sound near Maury Island, Washington, became the stage for one of the most enigmatic events in UFO history. As the 78th anniversary of the Maury Island incident approaches, the tale of Harold Dahl's alleged encounter with flying discs and shadowy figures continues to intrigue historians, UFO enthusiasts, and local communities alike. So Harold Dahl, a Tacoma resident and self-described harbor patrolman, claimed he was boating off Maury Island with his son Charles and 2 crewmen and his dog Sparky when the extraordinary occurred. Around 2 p.m., Dahl reported seeing 6 donut-shaped objects, each at about 100 feet in diameter, hovering above the water. One of the objects appeared distressed, ejecting molten slag that rained down, injuring Dahl's son and killing Sparky the dog. The debris, described as lightweight and metallic, reportedly damaged the boat. The next day, Dahl's story took a darker turn when he was allegedly visited by a man in a black suit driving a 1947 Buick. The mysterious figure, now iconic as a man in black, warned Dahl to keep silent about the sighting, marking the first recorded incident of the phenomena in UFO lore. The incident gained traction when Dahl and his associate Fred Crispin contacted Ray Palmer, who is the editor of Amazing Stories, a science fiction magazine. Palmer enlisted private pilot Kenneth Arnold, who had reportedly seen 9 flying saucers near Mount Rainier, to investigate. Arnold's sightings, which coined the term flying saucer, had already sparked national interest, and the Maury Island incident added fuel to the summer of the saucers. Arnold arranged a meeting in Tacoma with Dahl, Chrisman, and 2 Army Air Corps intelligence officers, Captain William Davidson and Lieutenant Frank Brown. The officers collected samples of the alleged slag stored in a Kellogg's cornflakes box and departed on a B-25 bomber. Tragically, the plane crashed near Kelso, Washington, killing Davidson and Brown and destroying the samples. The crash, the first of it for the newly independent Air Force, deepened the mystery with speculation of sabotage swirling. Dahl later claimed the incident was a hoax, but an FBI investigation concluded this recantation was itself a fabrication to avoid further scrutiny. Declassified documents reveal intense government interest, with the FBI, Army, and nascent CIA vying for jurisdiction over UFO reports. J. Edgar Hoover even asserted the FBI's authority over flying discs on the ground, highlighting the era's paranoia and fascination with unidentified flying objects. Today, the Maury Island incident remains a cultural touchstone in Washington. The city of Des Moines hosts an annual Men in Black Birthday Bash festival set for the end of June, featuring cosplay, alien-themed events, and a tribute to Sparky, like the Sparky's Revenge Dog Disc Tournament. So skeptics argue the incident was a publicity stunt or a misidentification, possibly tied to Cold War tensions or experimental aircraft. Believers, however, point to the government's aggressive response and the crash's suspicious timing as evidence of a cover-up. The slag's natural remains debated, with some analysis suggesting it was mundane smelter waste, with others claims it defies explanation. The incident's legacy ensures not only for its bizarre details, but for its role in shaping modern UFO mythology, predating the Roswell crash by days. As Washington marks the anniversary of the Maury Island incident, stands as a reminder of time when the sky sparked wonder and fear, whether fact, fiction, or something in between. It continues to challenge our understanding of the unknown, drawing curious minds to the shore of Puget Sound, Washington.
I never knew that date was. I'd forgot about that one. I mean, because I always think of the Kenneth Arnold incident. I never think of the Maury Island.
No.
You know? I mean, the poor dog. The poor dog got aliened. You know what I'm saying?
Well, at least they remember him at the Men in Black parties, and they have Sparky games. So that's kind of cool.
We don't get incidents like that anymore.
No, we don't. I think with our technology improving, maybe theirs improves, and it just becomes, it just, through attrition, things keep changing.
And that's where I miss. I would have loved to have been in ufology pre-internet, when all of these stories were popping up, when, all these great abduction stories were happening, whether it's Travis Walton or Calvin Parker or whatever it may be.
Sure.
And then you look at this incident where literally, I mean, they accidentally killed the dog. You know what I'm saying? They accidentally killed the dog. And we laugh about it now, but
sure.
I mean, you imagine how scary that would be with those drips coming down from the craft, hitting the boat.
Oh, yeah. And the whole thing is, this is still fresh and new in that time period, right? I mean, they just coined the term flying saucers. So, I mean, the whole scenario must have been absolutely petrifying for these people. And especially, like you say, with that stuff falling from the sky. I mean, but now looking back, that's so cool. It would have been so cool.
Yeah, I would have loved to have that happen. I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, but and I think you bring up a good point, the absolute terror that these gentlemen would have had. I mean, they didn't know if they were going to die.
Exactly.
And the currents in that area are horrible. I mean, if it's not like, you get into the ocean. I mean, never mind the sharks. Let's forget the sharks for a minute. Okay, but if you fall in the ocean and you got a life jacket on, there's a good chance, especially on the West Coast, the waters are going to be a little bit warmer at this time of year. Okay, so there's a good chance that you're going to survive, get picked up, or found, hopefully.
Yeah.
But in that part of Washington State, the currents with all the water coming inland and meeting up with rivers and everything, they are vicious.
Brutal. I've been on the water in Puget Sound in a large boat and on a few different occasions. And yeah, you can, when you're on the deck and you watch, boy, oh boy, like, I wouldn't want to fall in there. And you're right. It'd just be, if you're lucky, they'd get you back out.
Right. No, it's, I think it's absolutely scary. We got about just under 5 minutes to go here. What else you got for us?
Well, the last little bit I've got here is there's a new documentary coming out on the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident. So in London, a highly anticipated documentary delving into one of Britain's most enigmatic UFO encounters, the 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident, is set to premiere at the Raindance Film Festival in London this week. So titled The Rendlesham UFO, The British Roswell, the film revisits the mysterious events that unfolded in Suffolk's Rendlesham Forest over several nights in December of 1980, often compared to, of course, 1947 Roswell incident in New Mexico, due to its enduring intrigue and official documentation. So, film was directed by Mark Christopher Lee and Roderick Godman. The documentary promises to reignite debate surrounding the alleged UFO sightings reported by the United States Air Force personnel stationed at RAF Woodbridge. On December 26, 1980, security guards observed unexplained lights in the forest, leading to an investigation that uncovered a triangular craft with multicolored lights, as described by some witnesses. 2 nights later, Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt documented similar phenomena, including radiation readings and physical traces like ground impressions. The incident sparked theories ranging from extraterrestrial visitation to military cover-ups, with skeptics attributing the lights to the nearby Orford Ness Lighthouse or natural phenomenon. The film combines rare archival footage, exclusive interviews with eyewitnesses, and never-before-seen footage of recent anomalous sightings in that forest. Lee, a filmmaker with a science background, emphasizes the incident's credibility, citing credible military witnesses and ongoing unexplained activity in the area. Our aim is to create a conversation about what happened and push for greater transparency, Lee stated in a press release. The documentary also follows Lee and co-investigator Guy Thomas as they conduct field research described as sensational UFO road trip movie that captures strange occurrences echoing the original event. So the Raindance premiere marks a significant moment for the Rendlesham case, which remains the UK's most famous UFO incident. Lee has called on British government to address the event's national security implications, arguing the UK lags behind the US in UFO disclosure efforts. The film's release coincides with the increased global interest in UFOs fueled by recent Pentagon reports and congressional hearings. Festival organizers expect strong attendance for the screenings, given the incident's legendary status and the film's bold approach. Whether viewers lean towards extraterrestrial explanations or skeptic interpretations, the Rendlesham Forest UFO, the British Roswell, aims to challenge assumptions and keep the mystery alive.
I love the Rendlesham Forest story.
Mm-hmm.
If we ever, we talk about disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
Rendlesham Forest, in my opinion, has to rank up there with Roswell. I mean, we literally have physical evidence of this from the people who were there, the people who got downloaded by touching the craft. Okay, the militaries of both of Britain and the United States were both involved since it happened on a joint base. This is one of those stories that, especially most people here in North America, really haven't paid as much attention to as they should.
Exactly.
And I think that there is a lot more information out there on this case than what we know. I mean, it goes a lot further than the eyewitnesses. The cover-up on this has been completely coordinated by the military, obviously. You know, and I want to see this one.
Yeah, me too.
I really want to. I hope they put it on Netflix or Prime or Tubi, because I really, really want to see this one.
I do too. Looking forward to it. And I love the fact that they're going back to the forest and duplicating some of the stuff that happened there. Just makes it that much more cooler.
Oh, you're so right. You are so right on that one. And that goes back to what I said just a few minutes ago. We don't have a lot of these incidents anymore. Where are the incidents? Darn it, aliens, start bringing the incidents back. This one's on you guys. This one's on you. Tim, quickly here with 20 seconds left, could you tell everybody, give them an update when they might be able to see episode 4 of Secrets in the Forest?
I'm hoping a Thursday night or Friday morning.
Oh, you're pushing.
Oh, yeah.
You are pushing. All right, let's talk tomorrow about that. Thank you, Tim James, for another great UFO report as we say goodnight to Tim A. And hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Make that Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. Can't believe I keep forgetting my own company name.
Well, that's muscle memory, my friend. You'll get it.
That is total muscle memory.
Maya was awesome tonight.
Maya was on fire tonight. She was amazing.
I'm sitting up where, like, right here, working at the computer, and it's like I had to actually turn the volume down on the TV, because it was like I was starting to spend more time listening and watching what she was talking about than actually paying attention to what I was supposed to be doing.
Give me 2 seconds here.
No worry. Oh, Moody Mongol, you're moving out that way?
Moodens Mongolins.
No way.
Way to go, Moodens.
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 Dear Moodens. Oh, sorry. Night, T-Bone. We'll see you tomorrow night, hopefully.
Why did I do that? There we go. Publish. There we go. All right, Timmy.
All right, sir.
You have a good night.
You as well, my friend. We will chat tomorrow.
We shall chat tomorrow in preparation for Saturday.
Absolutely. And give Area 12 a kick in the butt for me.
I will. I'll give him 12 of them.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, guys.
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hey.
Good night, buddy.
Good night, buddy.
We'll see you later.
See you later. Little Timmy James, everybody. Big thank you tonight to Deborah Rooney with a hat trick, T-Bone ×2. Sweet Tony D, Tim, Area 54 ×2, and Necessary Dialogue for the great super chats. Tomorrow night on the show, where is it here? Jim Quirk is going to join us about extraterrestrial encounters. Oh, is that going to be fun or what? Believe you me, that's going to be fun. I got a little bit of a headache, so I'm going to sign off here. But thank you, everybody, for tuning us in. Love you all. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell, and do us a favor. Tell a friend and share this show because we are growing each and every day, and we can always use your help. See you tomorrow, everybody. Thank you for the love. Good night.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.